Hello, beautiful. I'm your host, Nicole Goff. Welcome to the Ecstatic Life Podcast, the podcast for women who want it all: health, wealth, freedom, authenticity, love, beauty, all of the hidden gems just waiting to be uncovered. This is the podcast for women who are ready to discover their inner creatrix, to discover their inner manifester, and who want to find the ecstatic in every day. Hello, and welcome back to the Ecstatic Life Podcast. I am host Nicole Goff. Welcome if you've never been here before. I am so glad to have you. This one is a special episode aimed at the men in my audience. I know this podcast is mostly aimed at women, particularly moms, but I also know that there are quite a few men who reach out to me that enjoy it as well. And I decided I wanted to do an episode really speaking to those men who have contacted me. And so this week's podcast is about the age-old question: what do women actually want? And subtext: why we're afraid to say it out loud. Not just afraid, but constricted in that ability to say out loud what it is that we truly desire. I, in my own journey of discovering what I actually wanted, really getting to know myself and discovering and following my true desires, I have uncovered some things that have really surprised me. And as I have peeled back the layers of martyrdom and people pleasing and all of the programming that goes into being a woman, I have truly rediscovered my own desires. And this ultimately saved my marriage. This ultimately gave my husband inspiration to step into his full masculinity. This ultimately has changed my entire life, because the truth about desire and wanting for women is that it is a God-given, God-led impulse within us. Wanting and desire are related to creation, and women are the birthers of this world. Quite literally, we gestate and birth new life, but we also birth energy and movements and art and passion. But what we have been conditioned for in this era is really people pleasing, and there is a fear of being too much. There is a fear of reaching for our desires. And not only that, but I feel that we have been manipulated into thinking that we want something that we truly don't. And particularly that would be competition with men, control over men, dominance over men in some way. And this has been culturally conditioned. It's my belief that this is something that's done on purpose. It's agenda driven, but we have been culturally conditioned to think that that is what we want. And I think truly when we go deep within ourselves, when we get quiet and we go inside, that we can see that that is not our deepest desire. That is not truly what lights us up. And so for women, we are also conditioned, as I said, for this people pleasing. And I do believe that the inner conflict that we experience around our wants and desires causes this tug-of-war, this inner tug-of-war. And our desires are pitted against a lot of this social conditioning to take care of other people and make other people feel better about themselves, to small ourselves in a way, to not be too much, to not take up too much space, to not want too much. And when we ignore our desires, when we put our wants and needs on the back burner, this leads to resentment and numbness and distance. This creates a real chasm within a marriage and really within ourselves. So as women, we are not following that God-led impulse. As I said, this is not something that I'm talking about as like frivolous. Oh, I want a new pair of shoes, and that makes my ego feel better. Like, we're talking about our deep desires. And maybe that pair of shoes is a part of that deep desire. Maybe that pair of shoes is satisfying a need for us to feel sexy, or to satisfy our inner little girl who wants to dress up and take up space. But what I'm talking about is these inner divine sparks that we have. And as we suppress these, as we push them further down, especially when we become wives, when we become mothers, as we shove these things down, resentment builds. And this is unconscious. This is an unconscious process. This isn't something that we are consciously doing, but we build up this resentment. And a lot of times it is aimed at our male partners. And part of this, as I was saying, is the conditioning. There is a culture of competition, and not just competition, but real animosity between genders. And again, I think this is something that's really pushed to create a divide, because the sacred union of marriage, the sacred union of coupling, of men and women coming together, of creating family, of creating life, is such a powerful technology. It is such a force in the universe. And to separate the masculine and feminine and put them at odds and put them in competition with each other really dims that light, dims that power, takes away our sovereignty. And so I can see as a tool of control where putting this wedge between men and women really serves to take people's sovereignty from them. But as I was saying before, women have this desire also to make people happy, to create social cohesion. And this is really a very deep biological need for us to create harmony and cohesion within our tribe, within our community. And the shadow side of this is the overextending and the people pleasing and the doing everything, the martyrdom. And as you become a mother, especially, you extend that to your children. And what is seen as good and holy for a woman is to care for everyone. And we spread ourselves thin, and we forget our desires, and we forget what lights us up, and we forget to follow our wants. Or even worse, we see those as dangerous, as selfish, as something that's at odd with family and community. And this is a very big misunderstanding about what a woman's wants actually are. And so personally, like my own personal story with this is that I was completely overgiving, completely stretching myself thin, trying so hard to be a good wife and a good mom and a good community leader and, a good friend and a good daughter and all of this, that I really stopped following what lit me up and what made me feel happy and alive. And when that is suppressed and buried, it comes out sideways, and it comes out in destructive ways. And so much resentment was built up towards my husband. I really blamed him. Because, honestly, men, you are the easiest, most obvious target there. You helped us create the kids and the life that then a lot of times can feel like it's suffocating us in a way. And this nearly destroyed my marriage. We were on the brink of divorce. We were, in all honesty, at a place where I thought we might not come back. And what seems so counterintuitive is actually what brought us back out of that was me learning to get in touch with my wants. For me, doing the self-exploration, years of self-exploration, to really soften back down into my feminine needs and to understand what those desires were, and that I needed to follow them and how to follow them, and to really start waking that up in me again, to becoming alive and whole, more than just wife or mom, but really like stepping back into that radiant being that I was when I fell in love with my husband, when he fell in love with me. And so, what does a woman want? Well, the first layer of this, as I'm uncovering now, is very individual. What lights her up? And how can she touch into that? How can she really allow that spark to shine through? A lot of things are kind of universal for women. It seems to be dance, singing, the ability to feel joyful and move our bodies in a way that expresses that joy seems to be a very deep feminine need. And a lot of times we lose touch with these creative and embodied practices. And so that can definitely be something to explore. And if you're a man and you're listening to this and your partner is not taking the time to move her body in sensual and embodied ways, then that is something that is probably causing unhappiness within her. You know, the other creative, artistic aspects, as I said, women are creators, but it's not just about birthing new life. It's not just about having babies. We need to move that creative energy through us, whether that is channeled through a career or through artistic dance, again, like however we can, but we need to be channeling that creative energy through us. And when that is suppressed, when we put all of that on the back burner and we see that as frivolous, then that's when that resentment and that bitterness really start to boil inside of us. Another thing that is so important that often gets put aside is our self-care. And this is what I talk about all the time. This is where it starts, is caring for ourselves. And that's down to a physical level, how we nurture our bodies, how we move our bodies, how we adorn ourselves, how we care for ourselves. These types of things are, again, seen as frivolous and extra, but it is such a deep need for women. And so when we aren't following these wants, when we aren't putting on the clothes or the makeup or the jewelry and caring for ourselves in this way, that is a sign that something is wrong. When we're not stepping into our wholeness and expressing ourselves and embodying the radiant beings that we are, that is definitely a sign that there is the resentment and the bitterness building up again. And another is the love and the touch and the intimacy. If your partner has pulled away, has pulled back, has closed off, has become cold, that's another sign that she is really needing this deep feminine reclamation, that she is needing to care for herself and build that self-love and the ability to express herself and step into that feminine energy again. Because again, we are beings that crave that. This is a natural want that I see in pretty much all women. I hate to say all and just blanket statement, but every woman that I know has the deep desire to be unconditionally loved, to be held and to be met in that way. And so that brings me to the next part. What do women actually want from their partner or in a partner? And again, some of the answers that I came up with, the conclusions that I came to, really surprised me because I grew up with an idea that there is a domination culture and the idea of the patriarchy. And while that is like a topic for a whole other subject, and I could go on about that, just suffice it to say that the feminist ideology that has been very pervasive, I think, has gotten a lot of things wrong. And the idea that we should somehow be above men, better than men, dominant over men in some way, I think that has been a big disservice. And I think deep down, unconsciously for most of us, what we really are craving from our partners is a man with a spine, a man with integrity, and direction and leadership, a man that can really step into his wholeness as a man, into his masculinity, and to hold space for us without domination. And I think this is where things get confusing because we have been taught to associate this kind of wholeness in the masculine to domination. And most of us don't want to be controlled and dominated. And this isn't what that's about. But a man who can step into his fullness of his masculinity and create the masculine container for us is like the biggest sigh of relief. It feels so expansive and safe. You know, that is one of the biggest things that we're craving in that. We want that feeling of safety. A man with a strong spine is safe. And so, how does a man get there? How does a man get to have a strong spine, to be actualized fully into his masculine? I believe that is a man who has done his healing, a man who is working on his own childhood wounding and his spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical self, his well being. A man who has done his own healing doesn't crumble under conflict. He doesn't project wounds onto his woman. He is strong and stable and sturdy. And this is something that women crave so deeply. Even though they might not be able to admit that, even to themselves. I, again, was very surprised by this. The idea that I wanted my husband to stand up and be strong and take leadership didn't come to me in those words. It was a deep craving that I had, but that idea, that wording, probably would have made me feel threatened in some way. Again, because of this conditioning, we are taught that there is danger in that. That a man's leadership, a strong man, is a dangerous thing. But really, what I've come to know now is a weak, unhealed man is so much more dangerous than a strong, steady man. And that really starts to embody that mature masculine. That really starts with doing your own self worth. Speaking to you men that are listening, that really starts with doing your own inner healing, your own work, and healing your wounded masculine, your immature masculine, and stepping up more fully into that mature masculine state. Because what we really want is a man who is steady enough to hold our storm, a man who is strong enough in his masculinity to hold space for us. Because women, we are different creatures. We have emotions that are very up and down. We are cyclical beings. We change throughout the month and throughout our lifetimes. I mean, just on a physiological level, when you're talking about our periods, when we're talking about menopause, like these are massive changes. Motherhood, pregnancy, and birth. We go through these cycles and we go through these massive changes. And men, on the other hand, the sun energy, you know, the cyclical moon versus the steady sun. Men, the sun energy, that like steady, bright force is what we crave. And a man who tries to run away from the feminine storm, run away from the changes and the roiling and the emotions that can happen with us, that do happen with us as women, or the man who tries to fix them, which is another thing that happens most of the time. A man will come in and try to fix the problem. Neither of those are satisfying for a woman. We want someone who can weather that storm, who can stand and hold space and be strong, not be moved by these emotional outbursts or by these changing of seasons that we go through. And that doesn't mean to be cold or callous or stonewall. And that is another typical response to put up the wall, to wall yourself in as a man from the perceived dangers of that feminine energy, that Kali energy that can come out of us. And so the matured masculine man is able to stand strong, strong in his integrity mainly. And that's, I think, what I mean by a strong spine, right? Strong in his integrity and not collapse under that weight, but also not control and dominate and be domineering, which I think is kind of the fear that we carry as women. There is a fear of that kind of control. And so we associate that strong masculine with that unhealed, more immature masculine, controlling, domination, taking. And my personal trauma, my personal history of sexual trauma really informed that opinion in me, that I had a deep fear of that masculine energy because of the control and domination and taking that I had experienced as a teenager. And so, another thing that surprised me as I have gone deeper and deeper into this work is learning that difference between that immature masculine energy that caused me to really pull back and to shrink away from that and to be fearful of it versus the mature masculine energy of leadership. And when I started to discover that, when I started to understand that difference, and I started to see how my behaviors could elicit one or the other response out of my husband, that was this huge turning point. And so for me, on our end, I began to understand that and I began to show up and care for myself in a way that actually elicited that mature masculine and caused my husband to step up into that role. But it doesn't have to be that way. The feminine energy can definitely lead in this sense. But if you're a man and you're listening to this right now, that doesn't have to be how it is. The masculine can take charge and start to heal and to step up into that leadership, and it can go the other way. It's really my belief that the most resourced partner does the work first. If you want to create a healthy relationship or save a relationship that is on the brink, it really, there's the whole cliche, it takes two, but it really doesn't in my experience. It really takes the most resourced partner to begin doing the work of healing themselves and stepping up to really pull that other partner up with them. So a man can begin to create this space, create this safe container for his woman that might have triggered some people, for his partner to really have the opportunity to follow her wants, to start stepping into her wholeness, to create that secure, safe container for her by really stepping into his mature masculine and really creating that space for her to fill up. When I talk about the masculine container, you can think of it in a lot of ways as a vessel, right? Or as the banks of a river. And the feminine essence is the flowing water. The feminine essence is the water. And so as a man can step into his healed, whole masculine self, he can create that space, create that container for her to flow in. Because really, what women deeply desire from a man is the feeling of being able to exhale, the longing to just soften and release. And, just picturing like strong arms around her, holding her through the storm. That is such a deep feminine desire from a man to surrender, to let go of control, to be able to drop all of those pretenses, all of that holding things up, to step out of her masculine. Because let's be honest, especially if she's a mom, she's like holding the spinning plates up all day. She is having to micromanage and organize and all of the just little things that go into raising kids and to creating a functioning, thriving household. And it is a lot of masculine energy that has to go into that. And so to be able to soften into her husband, soften into her partner, and just let that go and let that drop, that deep exhale of relief is so fulfilling to a woman. One of the deepest reliefs for us is to be held without judgment, without trying to fix, without trying to manage or to soothe, but to be held. Women want to be met in their fullness. And that, again, that includes the hormones and the moods and the chaos and the creativity and the fullness and aliveness. We want to be met in all of that. We want space to be held for all of that. And a man who is strong in his spine, strong in his integrity, and who has done the healing work and can show up for that, to really be there and be present for that, is an amazing feeling. And that 100% does not mean for a man to stuff down his feelings, his needs, his emotions. That is not creating the kind of space that we want held. That is not creating the kind of relationship that is fulfilling to us. You actually have to do that inner work to meet those inner demons, to really delve into childhood trauma or past relationship trauma or whatever it is that's in there, to really meet those demons, to really get to know that shadow side and to do that work. Because if you're just stuffing things down and you're just becoming rigid and contained and controlled in those emotions so that you don't end up in a fight or you don't do the thing that is scary, yelling, getting loud and big, and whatever it is that you're afraid of, if you just control it and box it up and stuff it down, that's building resentment on your side. That is building further disconnection. That is putting a bigger wedge between you and your love. So this holding space that I'm talking about, it's not that. It's not putting your needs on the back burner and shoving it all down. It is also not tolerating abuse and tolerating someone trauma dumping and putting all of their shit on you. That is also not what that is about. And so a man with strong integrity doesn't tolerate being abused. So again, there is this fine line that you have to learn within yourself. And again, it starts with that deep exploration. It starts with that getting to know yourself. And once you start to get to know yourself, and once you start developing these matured masculine traits and abilities, you actually become a more safe man. You actually become someone that a woman can exhale around. Because as I said, an unhealed man is a dangerous man. And women will test this. We will shit test. We will poke and poke and poke and look for the weak spots. And we are doing this unconsciously to test you, to see if you're safe. Like, we're like, can I trust you? Can I trust you? Will you stand when I fall apart? Will you retaliate? Will you lash out? We are constantly poking and looking for these chinks in your armor. Again, subconsciously, and I hope I'm not offending any women saying that. Women, if you have not done your healing work, there might be a chance that me talking about this shit test will be offensive to you. I can definitely say it was to me until I did the inner work on myself. But we do this. This is a female. Again, I hate to say universal, but this is something that I see pretty much with all women, is we want to test our men to see if they're safe, to see if they're strong, to see if they're trustworthy. And subconsciously, we can do this by trying to trigger them. And so, for a man to understand that and to be able to see when that is happening. And funny story is, my husband was the first one who pointed this out to me. And I can tell you, when he first pointed this out to me, I was not in a healed space. I had not done the required self work to be able to see what he was saying. And it really fucking pissed me off. It made me so mad. Like, I was so offended. Like, how dare he think I was doing it on purpose? How dare he think that I was like provoking him and trying to make him mad? Because this is really a totally subconscious process. This is really a totally subconscious thing that we do. And really, what is underlying that is our need for safety. Because if we're going to be honest, a man can kill a woman almost every time if you put a man and a woman together, with some, exceptions. But most of the time, that is the biological truth of the matter. A man is bigger and stronger and more dangerous, and there is this power dynamic. And so we want to know that we are safe. We want to know that we can create the chaos and that that man is going to be unmoved. And that gives us this true sense of feeling safe, that deep sense of safety in our bodies. This isn't a conscious thing. Again, this is all a subconscious, like physiological level, basic need for survival level. And so, back to my question. What do women want? What do we want from you? We want a man with firm boundaries. We want a man who can hold his steadiness in our storm. Not cold indifference, but unshakable rootedness. We want a man to create that masculine container so that we can soften and feel safe in our feminine bodies and in our feminine essence. And when we're not being met in this way, a lot of times what ends up happening is that we emasculate and browbeat. The shadow side of this, that we come to our men with these tests looking for strength. And when it's not found, we tend to further make the problem worse. We tend to double down and emasculate and browbeat and create more of what we don't actually want. Trying to drag leadership out of our partners. We're trying to drag leadership out of them, in a sense, by treating them like children, which never works and creates such a chasm. And this is one of the biggest problems I see in marriages right now. And so you end up with this role where the female partner is stepping more into that mothering role, more into that martyrdom energy. And, we either double down on the browbeating and the emasculating, and we double down on the people pleasing. And then we grow bitter. We grow resentful because this is just breeding more of what we don't want. And again, it just takes one partner to realize this dynamic and to step out of it and to start doing the work. I don't know if many of you have heard of the love and respect framework. So there's a book called Love and Respect by Emerson Eggerichs. I hope I am not butchering his last name. And I have read this book at least 3 times. And the framework for this is that what women deeply, deeply desire is unconditional love. But what men deeply, deeply desire with the same amount of need is unconditional respect. So for men, respect is like air. I mean, it is like necessary to their being. And we tend to, in our unconscious mothering energy and our I use the word browbeating, the putting our men below us in some way, of pushing them down, of asserting our dominance over them, we convey such a message of disrespect. And what a man truly desires, from my female perspective, anyways, what a man truly desires is admiration, trust, freedom from constant criticism and from being controlled. And for a woman, the unconditional love side of this, we are deeply needing, in the same way, like air, like water, like food, like something that we deeply need on a soul level, unconditional love, to be held in these ways that I've been talking about, to be accepted and cherished and just really held. That's the best word for it. Held. And to deny that love, to deny that attention, is like slow suffocation for us. And so these dynamics that we get in, they create more of what both partners don't want. We're getting further away from our wants, and one breeds the other. They really work in tandem together. And it's like, the less respect the man is getting, the less he'll give the love, and the less respect the woman is getting, the less love the woman is getting, the less respect she'll give her man. And it just snowballs. And it gets us to these places where we are enemies and where there is no harmony in the relationship. Both needs are completely valid and vital and holy. Both needs are complementary. And like I was alluding to before, there is this powerful, powerful energetic technology that is created when man and woman come together in union. And the masculine and the feminine energy, the yin and the yang, the balance, when they come together in union in that way, there is a sacred energy that is created. Two people together in balance in that masculine and feminine energy can create not just life, not just babies again, but can create massive change and can create cohesion in community and can create balance and harmony, and really on a spiritual level, so much growth. And this is why that sacred trinity, this is why that union is sacred. And so when we can bring those energies back in balance, in harmony, and when both sides are having their needs met, when both sides are getting what they want and crave and truly desire, that balance and that wholeness and that harmony is created. And both men and women have this masculine and feminine energy within them. And that is a topic, I think, for a different podcast. But there is also the balance of the masculine and feminine within each of us. And that feminine energy in a lot of men has been disconnected, pushed down, and shamed. And so maybe for a follow-up podcast, I will go deeper into that. But in wrapping up, in conclusion, what do women actually want? And I would say that is a masculine partner who is rooted in his wholeness so that she can soften into hers. Not perfection, definitely not control, but wholeness. A man who has stepped into or is stepping into his healing and his becoming. And for both partners, how can you step up more whole, more healed, more steady, to the partner who is listening to this right now and is the more resourced partner? How can you step up more? How can you lead with your energy more? How can you lead with your example, with your healing? How can you breathe more life into your relationship by breathing the very air that other partner needs through the unconditional love or the unconditional respect into them. Because really, the healing of the marriage, the healing of the relationship does start with the self-healing, does start with the healing of the self. And so I would like to invite you that if this speaks to you and you are ready to do that inner healing work, you are ready to save your marriage, or just to step up and to become the person who is dynamic and attracts the mate, even if you're single, doing this work makes you a high value partner. So if this is speaking to you and you want to go deeper, I would love to work with you. You can contact me on my website, NicoleGoffSpeaks.com/appointment, and we can set up a time to go further. I hope that this has touched some of you. I hope that the men that are listening feel like ecstatic life is for them also, which is a quote that I have gotten. Ecstatic life is for men too. So hopefully this has made your life more ecstatic. Please leave a comment. Please rate and review and share. I'm trying to grow this podcast. I am trying to hopefully be able to monetize this podcast. And so your feedback really, really helps that. Also, I have a Patreon, only $5 a month. You get bonus content. There's a whole archive of health and wellness and detox videos that haven't been released anywhere else. And the support would mean the world to me. So thank you all so much, and I will see you next time.